This podcast is brought to you with limited interruption by Rudy Luther Toyota. Whether looking for an exciting brand new Toyota, a certified pre-owned vehicle, or getting quality routine maintenance and service for your vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota is the place to go. Rudy Luther Toyota, the southeast corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley. Subscribe to the podcast Beyond Politics. They host some of the biggest names and smartest minds. Beyond Politics is from a former Democratic congressman who helped ignite Barack Obama's campaign and a former campaign manager and political columnist. They go beyond the usual chatter on politics, news, science, and books. It's politics and everything beyond. On Beyond Politics, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Broadcasting live on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, in the evenings on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, and overnights on 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle. It is the Matt McNeil Show here on your Tuesday. Good to have you with us today. Primary day in Minnesota, I should say, not just Minneapolis, but Minnesota today. So we're going to be getting into that in the 4 o'clock hour. Michael Brodkorb is going to join us. He is an author and a Republican who has been on the air with me in the 4 o'clock hour in the Minnesota time quite a few times, but I'm going to have him on the air because he's made a pretty big announcement, and I think this is not something that is unusual for moderate Republicans, kind of old traditional Reagan Republicans across the country. So we're going to get to that coming up here at a little bit later on. Patrick, how are we today?
Doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm doing well, because I've been on vacation, haven't watered things. I've been watering my gardens. My zinnias are coming in. My moonflowers are coming in. It is a happy day. I mean, if I can go outside, it's August. It's still nice weather. I can see nice flowers blossoming. I love that. That's one of my favorite things about whenever I travel anywhere is that you go to these great places and they're just great flowers, and I just love that. That's one of my favorite things to see because it's a flower. I don't know if it's our connection to bees or butterflies or what, but I like them. They're nice. Oh, it is. Okay. We're not going to get into this. We'll talk about just at the beginning of the next hour. We'll talk about J.J. McCarthy. Okay. I'm just not going to do a local sports story to start off. We'll talk about that later because I think that the Twin Cities is having a hard time. We'll get to that in a little bit. I will stay with sports, though, because I want to get to what is going on with Jordan Chiles and this bronze medal. So if you don't remember what had happened at the Olympics, Jordan Chiles, Simone Biles, and then the Brazilian gymnast were the three that were competing for the floor exercise at the Paris Olympics. And the Brazilian did a very good job. She won the gold. Simone won silver. And initially, Jordan Chiles was in fifth place. But what had happened is one of the judges, intentionally or unintentionally, you can't say for sure, but one of the judges had not correctly given her the technical score at the beginning, which is how you kind of gauge points. And they were wrong. And so fairly quickly, the coaches went over, informed the judge you had the wrong technical score. The judge fixed it. And Jordan Chiles moved from fifth to third. She got the bronze medal. You would think it would be that simple. Because once again, I want to make sure we understand, Jordan Chiles didn't do anything wrong. The error was made by the judge who had wrongly put down the incorrect technical score. So what has happened now is gotten kind of ludicrous. So what happened is I think it was it Ukrainian, or I can't remember who the fourth place finisher was, the one that was going to win bronze. She appealed the appeal, and they came back and said, oh, well, the appeal was out of the appeal window. You have 1 minute to appeal. They basically quickly gave the bronze back to her because they said it was 1 minute and 4 seconds. Okay, once again, The problem has nothing to do with the athlete or the coaches or anything with the U.S. team. The mistake was made by the judge. The judge made the mistake. So this is this is an Olympics error. The U.S. team caught it, but what the fourth place finisher was saying was that she didn't basically get back in touch fast enough to basically 4 seconds. Well, the U.S. team said, wait a second, we've got video proof that we actually got up there with something like 13 seconds to go before a minute was out. So it actually only took us 47 seconds to get up there, well within the 1 minute appeal window. And the International Sporting Agency is not going to consider this, even though, once again, by their rules, Jordan Chiles is the winner of the bronze. This has everything to do with these international groups. They just don't like the United States because the United States wins a lot. We are a athletics generation machine. One of the things I thought was amazing about the Olympics, especially like on the track and field, how many, not only were the American athletes all there, but how many of the athletes from every one of these other countries goes to college, trains in the United States. I would say probably 2/3 of all the athletes in the Olympics, for the most part, I'd say about 2/3 of them train in the United States or go to college in the United States at the very least, especially maybe if you minus China out of that, because obviously the Chinese have their system over there. So if you look at all the athletes minus China, with easily 2/3 of all the athletes, not just the U.S. athletes, but 2/3 of all the athletes in the Olympics go to school, train, compete in the United States. The United States is where we create athletes that win. So, the world does not like this. And, to a point, I get it. It's hard. I mean, one of the things that the Australians have fought hard on in the pool is to basically stop the American national anthem from constantly playing during the Olympics. The Chinese have basically gone over and they've taken over diving and table tennis, and no one else can compete with them. They're really good at both of those. To give credit where credit's due. I mean, they're really good. And even I was watching on one of the diving, the Mexican divers, who are very good. I was rooting for the Mexican divers. The Mexican divers, they had no chance. I mean, the Chinese are a machine when it comes to diving. It was amazing. They just don't like the United States. I can tell you right now, if the roles were reversed and say that another country's athlete realized the technical score error, went up there, Jordan Chiles currently was bronze, they would have quickly knocked Jordan Chiles down to fourth place, given the bronze to her. And if they would have said, wait a second, that was 1 minute and 4 seconds, it wasn't a minute, they would have said, oh, that's just 4 seconds. What's the heck? It could have taken 10 minutes, and the official ruling would have been, well, this wasn't an error on their behalf, it was an error on the judge, and so we're not going to criticize them. They didn't have to stay in the rules. They brought it to our attention. We'll make the change. But the fact that they're getting this nitpicky, and now we got this, USA Gymnastics was notified by the Court of Arbitration of Sport on Monday that the rules do not follow for an arbitrary award to be reconsidered after when a conclusive new evidence is presented. So basically, even though they have conclusive evidence that no, this whole 4-second thing is just crap they pulled out of their caboose to basically strip the United States of a medal, they basically are still going to go with it, even though they have video evidence saying that wasn't true. USA Gymnastics said in a statement, we are deeply disappointed by the notification. We'll continue to pursue every possible avenue and appeal process, including the Swiss Federal Tribunal, to ensure the just scoring placement and medal award for Jordan. CSA voted the on-floor appeal for Chiles' coach, had vaulted to third, saying that the appeal came a full 4 seconds beyond the 1 minute timeline. But USA Gymnastics disputed the timing, saying Sunday that the agency submitted video evidence to the CAS that showed Team USA coach Cecile Landy had appealed 13 seconds before the deadline. Okay. I mean, someone said, just give a bronze to both of them. I mean, maybe that's what you do. I mean, okay, because when it came down to the 4 seconds, when they initially said this, I didn't like that. But if they had proof that it was 1 minute and 4 seconds, they were indeed late getting the appeal in, well, those are the rules. Rules are the rules. But when suddenly that just seems to be something they made up. That they just, oh, she was 4 seconds late. Well, no, she was actually, 13 seconds early. We have video proof of that. The fact that they are so belligerently against this is pretty remarkable. It's unfortunate. Jordan Chiles deserves to have that bronze. I mean, she would finish third. I think that they should probably give it to her. I don't know if they will, but at this point, it sure looks like their intent is to strip her of the medal, and that is that. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. So there you go. I'll tell you what, one of the things I want to get into here, I'm going to start now, I'll continue it after the break, is what the abortion issue is going to do to the Republicans this election cycle. The Republicans, who for 50 years were the dog that chased the car, and then they eventually caught the car, had no idea what to do with it once they overturned Roe v. Wade. I honestly think they thought 90% of the people agree with them, that's just kind of par for the course for the Republicans. They think a far larger portion of the population agrees with them in their opinions more than actually do. And they were stunned, I say, when suddenly they realized, abortion, removing Roe v. Wade, was a poison pill. And it has hurt the Republicans dramatically across the country. This morning, we get the word that Arizona voters will get to decide in November whether to add the right to abortion in the state constitution. That has passed. Republicans were fighting that petition so damn hard. They were fighting it so hard, and they finally lost. It's going to be on the ballot. And I saw this story, which I think was from The Hill, that they put out there, and they was like, now that abortion is going to be on the ballot in Arizona, will that affect the outcome? I don't know. It's affected the outcome of pretty much every race since you overturned Roe v. Wade, so yeah, unless you've got some evidence it's not going to affect the outcome of the race, good luck. But now I think you have to move Arizona to maybe not even barely Democrat. I think you might even be getting into relatively safe Democrat now because of this abortion bill. Because don't fool yourself. Arizona there are a lot of right-wing nutcases in that state, but there are a lot of Democrats in Arizona, too, especially the people that have moved down there. And trust me, they don't want this what was it, the law from the 1800s to be the law of the land in Arizona. Not only we got to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about Florida and Missouri, which breaking news there, an abortion amendment's going to be on that ballot. We'll talk about that as well when we come back. It is the Matt McNeil Show here on your Tuesday. It is the Matt McNeil Show. On to the Arizona story here. The Arizona Secretary of State's office on Monday that it had certified 577,971 signatures, far above the required number that the coalition supporting the ballot measure had to submit in order to put the question before the voters this November. The coalition, Arizona for Abortion Access, said it has the most signatures validated for a citizens' initiative in state history. This is a huge win for Arizona voters who will now get a vote yes on restoring and protecting the right to access abortion care free from political interference once and for all, campaign manager Cheryl Bruce said in a statement. Democrats have made abortion rights a center message since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. As I was just telling Patrick this, how many Republicans keep screaming, why do you guys keep talking about abortion? The same party that talked about it, abortion's our number one issue. And now all of a sudden, because you took that right away from women to make the choices for themselves, then suddenly I was like, this is a nothing issue. You can't, You guys are going to your elections are going to burn for years because of this. All right, just hands down. The issue already set to go with voters this year in Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Nevada, New York, and South Dakota. I can add Missouri in there. I'll get to that in a second. Arizona law currently bans abortions after 15 weeks. The ban, which is signed into law in 2022, includes exceptions in cases of medical emergency, but has restrictions on non-surgical abortion. It also requires an ultrasound before an abortion is done, as well as a prenatal consult for minors. The proposed amendment will allow abortions until the fetus could survive outside the womb, typically around 24 weeks, with exceptions to save the mother's life or to protect her from physical or mental health. It would restrict the state from adopting or enforcing any law that would prohibit access to the procedure. Organizers said they initially submitted 823,685 signatures, more than double the little less than 400,000 required from registered voters. Opponents of the measure say it goes too far, could lead to unlimited and unregulated abortions in Arizona. Yeah, that's kind of the point, idiots. So you take away people's rights, and they basically want those rights back. So supporters, meanwhile, say the constitutional amendment ensures that abortion rights cannot be easily erased by a court decision or a legislative vote. In April, the Arizona Supreme Court upheld an 1864 abortion ban that permitted abortions only to save the mother's life. That sent the Republicans scampering back into the Capitol to basically get something passed because they didn't want to go into an election year with that. And that's when they passed the other one. But this one opens it up. Now, so here's the question. Now, Carrie Lake, once again, is the Senate candidate for Arizona. She's already trailing, and once again, take polls as a grain of salt because, once again, every one of them seems to have undercounted the Democratic vote from 5 to 15% since Roe v. Wade was overturned. So you take it with a grain of salt, but it still has the Democrat leading. What's this going to do in Arizona? A CBS News poll in May. 65% of likely Arizona voters said they would support a ballot measure establishing a constitutional right to abortion. 65%. 21% said they would not, and 12% said they were unsure. Okay, so once again, we get to play the little math game when it comes to elections. 65% of Arizona voters want this. How many of those voters are going to vote for this abortion amendment and then turn around and vote Republican straight ticket? A few will. I have zero doubt some will. But will 15% of those voters do so? Of course not. This is why I say, just judging from the numbers that you're seeing out here, Arizona just became a much harder state for the Republicans to win. Because they need to have, if that 65% number is true, which seems to play out in a lot of states, it's pretty close, generally from about 59 to 67, 68. So 65 is very believable. If that 65 number is real and legit, well, guess what? You're going to be looking at, there's no way in hell 15% of those voters are going to turn and vote Republican. It's going to be a Democratic landslide in Arizona with that amendment. That's why the Republicans were so viciously trying to prevent it from getting on the ballot. Looking at another state that has this ballot, I've talked about Florida before. Florida's ballot initiative to protect abortion is winning and has more support among voters than either Vice President Harris or Democratic candidate Debbie Mercado-Powell. According to the poll from the University of North Florida's Public Opinion Research Lab, 69% of respondents said they would vote for Amendment 4, which would prohibit laws from restricting or banning abortion until fetal viability. Constitutional amendments in Florida just need 60% of the vote to become law. By the way, also, it showed that the amendment to legalize recreational cannabis has enough support to pass, with 64% of respondents supporting it. So, once again, if Harris and Powell say that they are polling at 48-49, but you have this abortion bill issue, which is going to draw people out. Are you saying to me 17, 18, 19 points of pro-abortion people in Florida are going to turn around and vote straight Republican ticket? All it takes is 3 or 4%. You can have 12% of that. If it's 69%, you can have 12% of it, and it will be such a massacre at the ballot box for the Republicans. They will lose the state to Harris. They will lose Rick Scott's Senate seat. It will be bad. And as a matter of fact, you're probably going to see the Democrats pick up a lot of House and Senate seats in Florida. I don't know if those are up, but if that's the case, well, guess what? That is a rough number. 69%. That's Florida. We now turn towards Missouri, which this just came on down right as the news started here at the top of the hour. Missouri voters will decide in November whether to guarantee the right of abortion with a constitutional amendment that would reverse the state's near-total ban on the procedure. The Secretary of State's office certified Tuesday that an initiative petition received more than enough valid signatures from registered voters to qualify for the general election. It will need approval from a majority of voters to become enshrined in the state constitution. If passed, the Missouri initiative would do something that no other state has done, and a total abortion ban at the ballot box, said Rachel Sweet, campaign manager for Missourians for Constitutional Freedom, which sponsored the measure here. So Missouri now. Now, Missouri has gone more and more red over the years. It used to be a toss-up state, but it has gone more and more red over the years. Looking at this, and this was from a few months ago, so it's now it's a real thing. It's a much more different world. And once again, this was back when Biden was at the top of the ticket. So momentum has definitely swung towards the left. An SLU YouGov poll, respondents said the proposed ballot language for a constitutional amendment to end Missouri's ban on abortion. Missouri voters supported the constitutional amendment by a margin of 7 points. Now, they have it at 44 to 37. Independents also supported the measure 44 to 38. So basically what you've got here is, and like I said, it's hard to gauge because this is early. Biden was at the top of the ticket. This ballot was definitively not on this initiative was not on the ballot this fall. I don't know. I think you're not going to. Hawley is not doing that well there in Missouri. These abortion initiatives, they're going to leave a mark. And right now, in Arizona and in Florida and in Missouri, right now, the Republicans are meeting and frantically trying to figure out some way to message that does not include abortion. Good luck with that with your base. Come back, Michael Brodkorb, when we return. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
As the wind. I'm out here 1,000 miles from my home.
Broadcasting in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk. In the afternoons on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. And in the nighttime on 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle. It is the Matt McNeil Show here for your Tuesday. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. Michael Brodkorb is going to join us here to talk. One thing I do not want to miss, though, and I don't want to kind of ignore, is the fact that, and Michael Brodkorb is kind enough to join us right now. Michael, I'm going to start, if you're all right, with the girls are gone, because you are a Republican. You are someone who is it definitely, covered Republican politics. You voted Republican. If I'm not mistaken, you've actually been the deputy Minnesota GOP chair in Minnesota for the Republican Party. But you and I started talking because of the wildest real-life crime case in the history I've ever seen, and that was the Rucky case. And you covered it with your exceptional book, The Girls Are Gone.
That is true. Very kind of you, and thank you for letting me be on. You've always were so gracious and kind about letting me come on, aside from politics, but also about my book, The Girls Are Gone. And I appreciate your support over the years in allowing me to come on. It helped amplify the message. Prior to the girls being found, you were so helpful. And then in the aftermath in telling the story, you were just integral to the process. And I appreciate all you've done, and I'm forever loyal to that.
And just for everyone, Chicago, Seattle, seriously, you need to go get this book, because you will, every page, you'll be like, what? This is going on. Just really briefly for everyone out there, why don't you just give a little update on The Girls Are Gone, what that story is about?
The Girls Are Gone is a book I wrote about the disappearance of two sisters from Lakeville, Minnesota. They were involved in a custody dispute and were abducted. I did some writing for the initial reporting on their disappearance for the Star Tribune, and I wrote a number of stories that were helpful to law enforcement in locating the girls. Thankfully, they were found alive, and then I covered the criminal cases of the adults that were charged, and I later wrote a book about the case, and it was just a very rewarding experience, and I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to write it, and that these young ladies are living their lives, and I hope peacefully and quietly.
Yeah, and it's like I said, Allison Mann joined you on that one. The book is amazing. Go get it. The girls are gone. I'll link to that tonight on my social media, so go find that as well. Now, the main reason I'm actually having you on is a different reason, and that is the announcement that you made in regards to this upcoming presidential election. I'll just let you take the floor on this.
Well, I am someone who has I am a Republican, and I've done a lot of introspective and journey look at that over the last 10 days. But I have never voted for, never supported Donald Trump, and I was what would you be considered to be a homeless Republican, in a sense that I didn't have a home, didn't feel comfortable inside the Republican Party with Donald Trump as being the lead, as being the main voice and messenger of the party. And so I have not been supportive of his campaign. And as I said, I didn't vote for him in 2016, didn't vote for him in 2020. My intention was this election cycle I was going to write someone in. I was leaning towards writing in Liz Cheney and Dean Phillips. My pick was going to be Liz Cheney and Dean Phillips for president and vice president. And so it was, but what happened is because I was concerned a little bit about Biden's performance, and both of the candidates, I think, being somewhat elderly and old, want to be as respectful as I can. But the debate performance by Biden changed that. I was more concerned and really frustrated. And then my intention was to still do that. But then something happened in the last 10 days, which was Donald Trump's appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists event. And that changed my perspective. And I said, it's time I have to make a different choice. And so I started examining. I went through this kind of soul-searching process of if I was a Republican still, and where were my beliefs inside the party. And because in the course of that discovery, I went back to my archives, my extensive partisan archives, my library of books and other material that I've collected over the years. And I sat and I listened to multiple times Ronald Reagan's 1964 speech, A Time of Choosing, where he went out and articulated on behalf of Barry Goldwater the stakes in the election in 1964. And I listened to it and I listened to it. And I came to the conclusion that I'm still a Republican. And although I disagree with things, I'm still a Republican. It would be easier for me to just go out and say I'm a Democrat and be done with all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But I am a Republican at my core. And so I had decided that I had said on my podcast that I was going to be, that I'd changed my position, but I had not told my podcast co-host what that change in position would be. But after coming back and listening in the car, Donald Trump's performance at the National Association of Black Journalists, and just the vitriol, just the pure racism and the sexism that was on display, I felt that the best way that I could be helpful and be supportive would be as a Republican supporting Kamala Harris and for president. And part of the reason why is because of that time I spent in my journey just examining who I was as a Republican and did I believe in it, and did I what values still meant something to me inside the party. And I have to tell you something, that it comes down to a very simple issue for me, which is the Constitution and our acceptance of democracy and voting. Those are things that Republicans hold very near and dear. And so then when the Vice President Harris picked Tim Walz, it was an even easier decision for me. I am someone who had endorsed Tim Walz in 2022 when he was running against Dr. Scott Jensen in Minnesota. I have grown to become quite a fan of Tim Walz. I was active in party politics at a variety of levels. Congressman Walz was elected in 2000. Governor Walz was elected as a congressman. So when I first came a part of and becoming aware of Tim Walz is when he was a candidate, and then he was a member of Congress, and then he ran for governor and was elected. And where my affinity for Tim Walz came and from his leadership is where a lot of people break, particularly in my party, in my Republican Party, is during the pandemic. And to this day, there are still people out there who I think have such vitriol and hate towards Governor Walz for the pandemic. And I don't have that same level of feeling. And I proudly supported his endorsement, probably supported his campaign in 2022, because I think it's important that Republicans, we don't have to be robotic with our voting. And I haven't been robotic as recently as I have been in previous years, but it's important that Republicans aren't. And so I made this decision I spent well over close to a week kind of writing and listening and reading and kind of soul searching. I knew I was going to make this decision, but then I came out with this op-ed yesterday. And I have to tell you something, Matt. I have never felt better about a political decision that I made.
And let's be very clear here. You're still going to vote a lot of Republicans down the ticket. This is
sure, absolutely. I voted in the Republican primary today in the 2nd Congressional District. But I cannot begin to tell you how much of a smile I've had on my face. Because and it was interesting because I felt this, again, I was not someone, first of all, I've been very transparent that I was not a supporter of Donald Trump.
Yes.
Been very transparent with people about that. Yeah. And so I've never had this type of situation of where so I don't have statements like J.D. Vance where he, referred to him as America's Hitler. I don't speak that way. I don't speak that way about Republicans or Democrats. I don't speak in that language. So I don't have these issues. And so my commentary on Donald Trump over the last nine plus years since he entered the kind of the political landscape was to just largely be, I don't support it, not my style. And I quietly voted the way I did, but I did not vote for him in 16 or 20. And earlier this year in Minnesota, I voted for Nikki Haley in the Republican primary because I was hoping for there to be an alternative. But that changed, as I said, on that report, on that National Association of Black Journalists event. I think a lot of my feelings about Trump finally came out and what I truly believed he was and what I believe he is. Mm-hmm. But I have to tell your listeners, and I have to tell you, Matt, that I have felt so good about it. I've had such a smile on my face. I've been just in a great mood. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. There's a few Republicans that are upset, and I expected that. Yeah. But far more positive than what I expected it would be in terms of reaction. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me and ask me to explain. So I've had a lot of conversations.
Well, and if I can, the Mesa, Arizona Republican mayor came out and kind of a similar thing. I mean, I'm going to endorse Harris. We can't go with Trump again. And, I mean, you do have this. There are a lot of moderate Republicans, Reagan Republicans, old school Reagan Republicans, not kind of the modern version of it, but the guys from the 80s that were, kind of more socially liberal and fiscally conservative. And they're out there. And you're not the only one I've talked to that sometimes they look around and it's like, what party is this anymore?
Oh, I would agree with you. And I would agree with you. And I think what you get from Republicans and with the kind of response I've gotten is, well, how can you agree with them on any of the issues? That's true. I disagree with them on a lot of the issues. Yeah. I did disagree with them. But I don't disagree with them on, I don't believe that they're going to want to suspend the Constitution. I don't believe they're going to try to. I don't think they're going to engage in any type of political discourse that's going to lead to an insurrection at the Capitol steps. I believe that I think that Harris and Walz, Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, will commit themselves to a peaceful transfer of the election. And should Trump and Vance win, which I don't think that they will, but I have the utmost faith that Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, President Harris and Vice President Walz would be good stewards of the Constitution and democracy. Yes, I will disagree with them on policy, but I don't have to worry for the next 4 years about either one of them attempting to suspend the Constitution or engaging in an insurrection or having that type of violent rhetoric that we've seen over the last few years and what we saw under the Trump administration. People are exhausted right now. Mm-hmm. I cannot begin to tell you how exhausted I think Republicans are. And I wrote my op-ed in a very specific way. First, it was true to how I feel, and I wanted to time right, but I wanted to use it as a launching point for discussions. I hope I laid out a pathway for Republicans to have a conversation about this race and what they can do. But I have to tell you something. I am so proud of it. And I'm so happy that I made the decision. I feel comfortable with it. I feel comfortable saying that I don't agree with Vice President Harris and Governor Walz on everything. But on the core beliefs of this country and the Constitution and affirming the institutions that we have, I'm so comfortable in my decision.
You and I often talk politics because you and I remind each other of what politics used to be. We might
Correct.
not agree on something. We might look at each other and say something to the effect of, well, I think there should be less school funding and people have more choice. I feel as if, well, we'll give more money to the schools, let them make the decision. These are discussions we used to have. Education,
Correct.
health and human services, transportation. We used to do this, and the sausage making. That's what the sausage making. And it is really different because this is an all or nothing sort of mentality. And the undercurrent that we all see is this: we want to punish the enemy's thing, coming from we're going to basically go this Project 2025, whatever the case may be. There is, as you say, it's exhausting. It is. I think one of the reasons why Harris and Walz is resonating is because happiness, joy, people with smiles, it feels very different than politics have felt in a long time.
I have to tell you something. It was almost instantaneous with me because I knew that there would be some there would be some issues, that there'd be some pushback. The response has been incredibly overwhelming. And by the way, I have to say to you something. I'm a romantic about this country, and I love the institutions of this country, and I love America. And I've been walking around with my USA cap from the Olympics. I've never felt better about elections, what the hope and opportunity that this country has, based on and that I think embodies both Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. And let me speak to that. I listened to Reagan's 64, A Time for Choosing. I listened to his speech in 76 in front of the Republican National Convention, his acceptance speech in 80, his acceptance speech in 84, his 88 address, his farewell address in 94. I went through a whole bunch of my archives, read a whole bunch of books as I was examining this process. And I will tell you something, that there is, without any hesitation, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance do not speak like Republicans did years ago. And what the hope and optimism and the teamwork are really a part of Harris and Walz.
All right, we're going to take a break here. I want to come back. I want to bring up two specific individuals and see how this helped weigh on your decision here. Michael Brodkorb is joining us today to talk about his political decision. Well, come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Tuesday. The Matt McNeil Show on your Tuesday. Nice to have you with us today. 952-946-6205. Michael Brodkorb joining with us, talking about his decision as a Republican to vote for Harris and Walz. I want to bring up two people, Michael, and I want you to talk about the impact here. One is obviously someone you've mentioned, Governor Walz being added to the ticket. But also in the state of Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar, her Senate seat is up for re-election this year. She is running. She is currently leading pretty substantially. The primary is in Minnesota today, and it is looking like Royce White will likely be the Republican candidate for the Senate. He has been a polarizing figure himself. Talk about Walz and White in regards to how that impacted your decision as well.
First of all, I've seen Walz develop and grow as a politician and someone I've truly come to admire. And I will say that as a partisan Republican. And I was. It is in Governor Walz's DNA to win people over exactly like me. And that's why I think he's the perfect choice to be the Vice President Harris's running mate. He did it in the first district. He did it in his race for governor. And I'm a believer in his. And even if I disagree with him on policy, I think Governor Walz is more. I think most Minnesotans would agree that if there's a problem that needs to be solved, I think that Governor Walz will be more of the solution than part of the problem. And I think he's led under incredibly difficult circumstances. And I will also say this, Matt, I feel good about Minnesota. I know there's rooms for improvement. There always is. Yeah. There's always room for improvement. But Minnesota is on the political landscape again, I think for all the right reasons. And if I can be helpful in being engaging and being positively supportive of Vice President Harris and Governor Walz and do some type of outreach, and understanding the circumstances that Republicans are in, that's really the sweet spot where I think I can be most helpful. And I really want to have some of those discussions that I think Republicans are having internally.
Mm-hmm. The Royce White, this is Steve Bannon's guy. And you from the get-go, and you and I talk politics, just the nuts and bolts, the real, digging in the dirt sort of thing. He's a guy that he's very polarizing, and it seemed like a bad choice for the Republicans to go with him because he's going to turn off far more voters than turn on. And yet he won the endorsement at the convention today with the primary. Unless something really shocking happens, he's going to become the Republican nominee to go against Amy Klobuchar. You as well have been, okay, this is not the guy we should have run for Senate here. This is not the candidate we should have run against Amy Klobuchar.
Yes. Interest of disclosure, I worked on Mark Kennedy's race and for the state party in 2006 when then Hennepin County attorney Amy Klobuchar was first elected to the United States Senate. She has an incredible operation, strong brand, and it's really and it's done just, I think, based on election results. She's been an incredibly successful politician and United States Senator from the state of Minnesota. People can have disagreements with her, but she has been able to win her elections from the first one in 2006 up until 2018 with the type of broad-based coalition that's needed to win in this state. I have my political analysis on the race was running against Senator Klobuchar is an uphill battle, and the hill is the size of Mount Everest. I mean, it's going to be tough to knock her up, but that doesn't mean you throw a candidate like Royce White in the race. And it's an insult to Dynamite to say that Royce White is dangerous. Dynamite's dangerous. Royce White is worse than that, and he represents, I think, the absolute worst element inside the Republican Party. I think it would be disastrous for Republicans if he were to be the Republican candidate for the United States Senate. And I don't say that from the standpoint, Matt, that I think Senator Klobuchar should be voted out of office. But campaigns can be an opportunity for there to be a discussion and ideas and values and where we go in this country. Royce White is not going to be value added to that discussion. And I don't see how Minnesota will better in any way from his participation in the electoral process. He traffics in conspiracy. He traffics in anti-Semitism. He traffics in bigotry and all of the worst elements. I don't think that the reason why Republicans haven't won in this state is because we didn't have enough Alex Jones and Steve Bannon. And I think he's a disaster. He's so bad that I don't think the Trump campaign is going to want to associate with him. And I think he has no place being endorsed by a major political party. And I hope his candidacy ends tonight, but I am concerned that it will continue.
And, of course, once again, it's not just that race. The impacts down the line, you get, I mean, if Trump is not going to win Minnesota, and I find that highly unlikely now that Walz is on that ticket, and Amy Klobuchar, who has some of the best coattails in Congress, is there, you got to find candidates that don't turn voters off. And you can have a lot of, candidates down the line that just have no chance because the top of the ticket is too toxic.
Minnesota is a purple state. On a good day for Minnesota Republicans, it's maybe like a little Vikings purple, but it's a purple state. And so what that means is that the Republicans have to be smart about the candidates that they pick. You cannot endorse candidates like Royce White and expect to win. You cannot have candidates like Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Royce White at the top of the ticket and think Republicans are going to win in this state. It's just not the way to do things. Mm-hmm. And it's problematic, and it's not the way to win. And his conduct and his behavior has been absolutely offensive and outside the bounds of normal political discourse. And Matt, as you're out of your non-Minnesota listeners might not know, but you'd be hard pressed for any Democrat in the state to ever say I've ever pulled a punch when it came to partisan bickering. Royce White just engages in absolute foul-mouthed gutter talk, and he's the type of candidate that walks into a room and can find a way to offend 5 people in a room where there's only 4 people in there, and there's no way he'll be successful and value added to the Republican ticket. And when the election's over with, and if Republicans, depending on the outcome, if Republicans aren't successful, the list isn't going to be pretty difficult to understand why they're in the mess that they're in.
You and I don't agree on a lot of politics, but we agree on Harris and Walz. we'll have that, and you're still my friend, because that's one thing I do like about you, Michael, is that we can still be friends and talk politics. The girls are gone. Go find that book. I cannot recommend that book enough. That book is nuts. Michael Brodkorb wrote that. Michael Brodkorb wrote the editorial that's in the Star Tribune about him voting for Harris Walz. Michael, thank you very much. I appreciate the time today, my friend.
I can't wait to be back to talk Vikings soon.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about what happened today in just a little bit. Yes. Thanks, Michael. Seattle, Chicago. We will talk to you tomorrow. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Hour 2 up next. Hour number 2 of the show here on your Tuesday. Matt and Patrick and Brett is stepped into the studio as well. Hello, Brett. How are we today?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about you?
All righty. I will... okay, so first of all, Matt Matthews tickets, I got those to give away a little bit later on today. We're going to be giving away those. And once again, they don't even go on sale until Friday. Shows in January over at the State Theater. He's coming back on tour. Listen for your chance to win tickets to Matt Matthews coming up here a little bit later on. I'm going to read to you, once again, they had this in the news at the top of the hour here. This is just a brutal take. This is how you take these guys and you put them in their place. This is, of course, Tim Walz talking about these made-up attacks on his military service, something that I have zero tolerance for because I'm a veteran and I won't do this. But I can't believe how well he just did this. I'm going to read the quote. This is in Los Angeles today. I am damn proud of my service to this country, and I firmly believe you should never denigrate another person's service record. To anyone brave enough to put on that uniform for our great country, including my opponent, I just have a few simple words. Thank you for your service and sacrifice. Ding! And, of course, once again, I'll point out the fact that, and I went around with a few conservatives, J.D. Vance, he trained to be a combat correspondent, but he did not serve as a combat correspondent unless he was in combat. I can say this because I was attached to the Armed Forces Radio Network in Nuremberg, Germany. That was technically my first radio gig, talking to something like 30 million people. Never again. Anyway, it's just like Chicago, Seattle, we're getting there. But yeah, but my gosh, I mean, the amount of people I was talking to back then. But if you are a correspondent, if you're not in a combat zone, you're a combat correspondent if you go into a combat zone. Doesn't mean you weren't trained that way. But Vance has repeatedly referred to that he served as a combat correspondent, and he didn't do that. Same thing with, like, combat medic. You train to be a combat medic, but unless you're in combat, you're just a medic. And then if you go into combat, then you're technically a combat medic. So there is a difference. I mean, I thank him for his service, too, but if anyone's misrepresenting their service, it ain't Governor Walz, that's for sure. So am I going to have to drive you guys home as you get drunk at the station because J.J. McCarthy now has got a torn ACL or whatever it is?
Yeah, this certainly doesn't sound like good news for the Vikings quarterback situation, although I guess the only silver lining would be is that he probably wasn't going to play a lot this year anyways, but never good to have your first-round quarterback go down with a knee injury, since those can be lengthy. After
one game, Vikings rookie quarterback J.J. McCarthy tore the meniscus in his right knee, and the team doesn't know how long he'll be sidelined. The next line. Being a Minnesota sports fan is hell. It's the next line in the story. Vikings fans were unsure of McCarthy when the team selected him with the 10th overall pick, but he looked good on Saturday's preseason game, but he tweaked his knee. Now the question comes down to this, and this is what I said, because I had a daughter that had ACL tears in both knees. Some people are prone to that. Some people are not. He could just have a little tear, gets cleaned up. Could be a major tear, one and done. But if it's one of those cases where this is, because the recovery on this is a year. It is, if it's a full tear, it's a year. He's gone. Yeah, I'm. If there's anything more Minnesota, I don't know what it is. I mean, seriously, if there's anything more Minnesota than the superstar quarterback that's supposed to save this team, basically playing one preseason game against the Las Vegas Raiders, and basically, not being able to play, having damaged his knee, it is the epitome of this team.
Well, I heard Kirk isn't very happy in Atlanta. Maybe they call them up for a trade.
I don't think he's coming back here.
I don't think they could trade him in his contract. No.
Kirky changed. No, well, would you? I'm sorry. I'd still with the amount he was asking, it was the right call to let him go.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we can have an argument, should they have traded up a little higher to try to get a better quarterback. But I think the supporting cast they got in that draft was pretty good. We got Sam Darnold. That's our backup plan anyway, and that was the guy that was supposed to start most of the games this year anyway. Hopefully, this is just a few weeks. He's back at it by maybe October, November. Would it be, Patrick? Would it be October, November if he was to come back?
Yeah, it would be something like that, but it really depends on what they find in the testing. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, that's the epitome of this. I've heard multiple people say that unless there's some big things happen this year, that this might be the end of Kevin O'Connell and the front office, the general manager. That this is their team, and they have not been able to turn this around yet. And let's face it, their first draft was an absolute bust. I went back and looked at that. Their first draft was garbage. No one on that draft ended up panning out. So now you got this guy who's a huge draft pick and in the wheelchair on the sidelines. Great. We have also one other quick story here. We have learned one thing: you do not mess with the Edina cops. I don't know why people keep trying to do this. They've got so much money in that town. I don't know if they put planter chips on you or what, but you will get caught if you try.
Yeah, we bring this up about once a quarter when someone decides, let's mess with the Edina cops and see how that goes.
Apparently, 3 children. They took 2 stolen cars on a high-speed chase into Edina, and it ended in Edina. Edina PD said it received reports around 6:45 a.m. of a group of people stealing a Toyota Tacoma near the 5100 block of Abercrombie Drive. The group was also driving a black Kia, which had been reported stolen from Invergrove Heights. While officers were on the route, the Tacoma and Kia started driving at high rates through the various neighborhoods to escape. The Kia crashed in another car near the Tracy Avenue ramp across town, and the suspects fled. One child was immediately arrested. The police also finding a handgun in the Kia. Okay. Officers set up a perimeter. They basically tracked down those other 2 kids really fast. The Tacoma was driven towards St. Louis Park, was later recovered in Minneapolis. No injuries reported in the incident. The case is under active investigation. They have you on camera 1,000 ways from Sunday. You are not going to get away with this.
Let's carjack someone in Edina. What would go wrong with that?
It's easy to avoid that town, too, you idiots. I mean, I'm not here trying to tell you how to crime. I'm not. But it's an easy city to avoid. You don't have to. It's easy to avoid Edina. I mean, you have to want to go into Edina. And yet you idiots do. And they're just sitting there waiting for you again. All right, this will be fun.
And they had a whole bunch of roads shut down this morning, too, so they were all over that. I was curious what was going on, and apparently that was the case. They were on that right away.
Can I just say this? Mom and Dad, you seem to be sucking at the job of parenting if your kids are out at 6 in the morning stealing cars. I just want to say, and I don't want to hear you throw your hands in the air. It's like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. Not raise criminals. I guess, that might be the first thing. I raised 3 kids. You know what? None of them stole a car. Managed to pull that off.
Hey, aren't they pretty ambitious kids, though, for doing that at 6 a.m.? They got up nice and early in the morning.
I think you're missing the point here, Brett. Well, he's wearing a suit and tie as he breaks into the car. Well, you have to admire the commitment.
Well, early bird gets the worm.
He just stole a car, but he puts in the hours over at the Arby's. Okay. And by the way, all your buddies, like I said, they've got you all on camera. You don't think they do? They know exactly who you are, and they're coming to get you because it's Edina, you idiots. I don't know how else to say it. They're probably waiting for you with Mom right now. That's like, just put your hands out. Just put your hands out, let them put the cuffs on you, take you away. That's all I'm going to say. 952-946-6205. So primary day, my ballot literally was just, either the Senate seat on the Republicans or the Democrats. That was it. The entire ballot for me. No contested races or anything like that. So real simple, easy peasy for me today. Did you go out and have you done your primary yet?
I haven't done it yet, but I think I'm largely going to be in the same boat as you. I pretty much am only going to have that Senate race to choose from. I'm in CD3, not CD2, or not CD5 rather. So no choice between Omar and Sanders.
I'm in 3 too. I've kind of, because you don't have to commit to a party. You only can vote for one party though. And I thought about voting for Royce. just that this will guarantee that the large burning, airship you see is the Minnesota GOP Hindenburg going down into a field in New Jersey. I can see it coming. That cab with it, or they're going to elect Royce White as their nominee.
I mean, I know it's a tough race for them, but couldn't you find some former member of the legislature that would want to run and be the sacrificial lamb for the Republicans instead of Royce White?
I can tell you,
people?
I'm going to tell you this straightforward. They could have run me, and I would have done less damage to the Republican Party than Royce White is about to do to the Republican Party. Dead serious. They could have run me. That's not a joke. They could have run me, and I wouldn't have done this because you know what? Have you seen his social media pages? I mean, I'll take some quips and shots at you guys, but I'm not going down that road. And I'm just, okay, so is it October 1st that every Republican in the House that's running is like, I don't really agree with Trump or Royce White at all. I hope people can just, gauge me on my own merits here as opposed to the rest of the party. How long does that narrative start taking off?
Yeah, that's an ugly top of the ticket. Donald Trump and Royce White. Throw a little J.D. Vance in there, too, as your VP nominee. That's quite the combo for the Republicans.
Seasoned with Steve Bannon. Oh. It is primary day. Of course, Patrick Coolican joining us from the Minnesota Reformer. I imagine you guys talking primary a lot today.
Yeah, we're talking primaries today and mainly focusing on what's happening in CD5, obviously, with the Ilhan Omar versus Don Samuels race. But CD2, this Republican race is fascinating me.
That is nuts down there.
Yeah.
Who is running? I don't know. We could... That's crazy. Minnesota 7's going to be crazy,
yeah.
too.
Oh, that's right, yes.
They got that far righto guy that actually looks like he might be able to pull that out up there. I don't know if he will. I mean, it could. It might just be a pipe dream, but there's a lot of that Steve Bannon vein up there, man.
Yeah, that district has been moving far to the right ever since they lost Colin Peterson. I could see Fishbach also going down, which would be shocking to have a sitting representative lose. And they lose more seniority in that district after having the long-tenured Colin Peterson get them so much for their farm bills, and then they've pretty much got nothing.
I will make this argument. If she does lose, she'll run as an independent, and she would have a pretty decent chance of winning. But that would be my theory. You're also going to talk to Coolican about the Tim Walz resume, right?
Yeah, Tim Walz resume. Patrick, and the rest of the staff of the Reformer did a nice job putting together a really overarching view of everything that Walz has accomplished, especially during his second term. And as we talk about later on in the interview, there's some accomplishments in there that even I forgot about. So it's quite an impressive resume, and we'll discuss a little bit of how they could help him on the VP circuit as well.
Brett talking with Patrick Coolican at the Minnesota Reformer right here on AM 950.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Brett Johnson with you here on this primary election Tuesday afternoon. And, of course, with it being primary day, we have lots of races to cover in terms of what you should be watching for with results. So figured it'd be a good time to bring on Patrick Coolican of the Minnesota Reformer, who, of course, normally joins us on Tuesdays anyways, as we're going to be talking through primary races and a little bit on Patrick's column that he wrote on what Tim Walz has done as governor of Minnesota. Patrick, thanks so much for coming back on the show today.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So looking at primary races, for the most part, we have a lot of pretty sleepy races throughout Minnesota, but there definitely are a few to keep an eye on that could become very competitive. And let's at least start at the congressional level, because we have DFLers who are going to be choosing between current Representative Ilhan Omar and her challenger Don Samuels. Meanwhile, in the 2nd District, Republicans will be choosing between Joe Tirab, who was recently endorsed by former President Donald Trump, as well as Taylor Rahm, who was endorsed by party regulars at their convention this year, but then dropped out, but still could very well be competitive in this race. So looking at least on the DFL side, back in 2022, Omar only beat her challenger Don Samuels by about 2 percentage points. And of course, here in 2024, they are squaring off in a rematch. So I'm curious, on your end, Patrick, what are you thinking about this race? Is this going to be as competitive as it was in 22? Or if it's not supposed to be as competitive, what has changed in terms of this maybe not being as close as what we saw 2 years ago when Omar faced off with Samuels?
Yeah, I don't think that it's going to be that close this year, and the reason is simply that Representative Omar is just putting more effort into the race. Her strategy, such as it was last in 2022, was just to kind of ignore Samuels. She's not doing that this time. She has raised and spent a lot of money. She's clearly got a much more robust ground operation. And she spent quite a bit on TV as well. So I think she's leaving nothing to chance this time. Kind of learned her lesson from 2022. That's kind of how it feels. But anything's possible because without statewide races for Democrats to come out and vote on like they did in 2022, there's still the threat of low turnout, and so that's probably the only thing they really need to be concerned about. I think Samuels would probably, he did benefit from low turnout in 22, and he would benefit again if that were the case. But I do think that Omar has put a lot more into this race.
I'm curious why more outside groups aren't jumping into this race like we saw back in 2022, being that, well, specifically with AIPAC, they had success in ousting Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush from their races nationally, but for the most part, they've stayed completely out of this race in the 5th District as well as other outside groups. Do you know why they've kind of been assessing that? Have they largely been determining that this race probably isn't going to be competitive? Because I am curious about that, being that we did see a lot of money being spent in the 5th District back in 22.
Yeah, I think that they I'm just speculating here, but they made the determination that unlike the Cori Bush and Bowman races, you did not have as quality a challenger, and you didn't have some of the vulnerabilities that Bush and Bowman had. I mean, Bowman was running very hard against Israel in a district with a significant Jewish population, and Cori Bush, by some reports, was not a very responsive congresswoman, and whereas Omar's her constituent service, I think, is considered certainly competent, and so that those outside groups have to make that determination about, is it worth it to spend limited resources on a race that they don't see much hope in. I'm a little surprised because Samuels came so close last time, but it just does not appear that he receives the $4 or $5 million that they needed to really get up on TV and make this more competitive.
Well, switching gears now, let's go and talk about the Republican side, because they also have a competitive congressional race. This is in CD2, which is primarily the South Metro and some of the surrounding areas, where Taylor Rahm, who is one of the candidates, ended up leaving the race last month to serve as an advisor for President Donald Trump's Minnesota campaign. He's was facing off against former federal prosecutor Joe Tirab, who is also running in the primary. So what I'm curious about, though, Patrick, even though Taylor Rahm has officially dropped out of the race, he's still going to appear on the ballot, and many locals in CD2 Republican circles are still encouraging people to vote for Rahm. So I'm curious, what's their aim as to why some of these local Republicans, are still trying to get people to vote for Rahm, even though he says he has dropped out of the race?
Yeah, I mean, they endorsed him, and they feel like they're owed something here. They put in the time and energy to get him endorsed, and he's supposed to be the guy who's going to run in November. I'm sure a very frustrating experience for kind of regular Republicans in that 2nd District, because it did appear that Tirab is the better general election candidate, and that a path had been cleared for him. But the Rahm supporters are not backing down, and at least there's some chatter. It's hard for me to know how real it is, but that he could still win here. So we'll be interested to see how that plays out. He also has not come out really, and I mean, he could have made a more aggressive effort to get Taylor, make sure he wins this primary. He doesn't seem to have done so. So the only thing that Taylor has going for him lately is that Donald Trump endorsed him, and he's always been the Republican establishment, such as it is, a pick in that race. He has Tom Emmer's people working with him, and has been able to raise money. He's certainly a better candidate on paper, but the party activists did not like him, and they still want Taylor Rahm. So we'll just have to see what happens here.
And just to be clear, if Taylor Rahm were to win that primary, he very much would be the Republican that would be nominated in the 2nd District, even though he said he was dropping out of the race. And I just want to look at this from one other angle, and that's the fact that he did drop out of this race about a month ago, and that, of course, was when Joe Biden was still the Democratic candidate for president. Now, obviously, things have changed over the past few weeks, and at least prior to Biden dropping out, Republicans thought Minnesota could be a very competitive race with Trump trying to take the state, and might have made some sense for Rahm to focus on working with Donald Trump's Minnesota campaign. But maybe with Kamala Harris at the top of the ballot now, Republicans and the Trump campaign no longer see Minnesota as being very competitive. Therefore, Rahm maybe doesn't have a whole lot to do, so he could kind of backdoor his way into that congressional race. I know I'm kind of putting a lot of pieces together, but it is kind of an interesting angle with how much the national race is chased that maybe Rahm's thinking has changed as well. Has there been any indications of that?
You're right, because you're right that, especially with Walz on the ticket and Amy Klobuchar at the top of the ticket, I don't think any Republicans think that Minnesota is now in play. And so, what is the value of being a Minnesota advisor, a Republican advisor to the Trump campaign in Minnesota? It's like being a sobriety advocate at Mardi Gras. I'm sure he's having second thoughts about quote unquote dropping out of the race. But the bottom line is it's all worked out perfectly for Angie Craig.
Yeah, she's got to be thrilled about this being
the Democrat.
Right. Yeah, if Republicans can't figure out who they're going to run, which, as we said, this is typically a very competitive seat, but it's taking Republicans until August or even longer to really unify behind a candidate. If they even end up unifying, that could largely end up slipping away from them as we head towards the fall election. Well, I want to talk about the U.S. Senate race now because obviously Amy Klobuchar is running for the DFL nomination and will very likely, unless some weird miracle happens, will be the DFL nominee for U.S. Senate as she tries to run for re-election. But I want to talk about the Republican side because I at least always assumed that Royce White was going to be the Republicans' guy to face off against Klobuchar. But he is facing a challenger, that's Navy veteran Joe Frazier, who doesn't appear to have a large financial backing. I'm just curious, is there any chance this race could be competitive just given the very checkered past of Royce White, or is this largely going to be something that Republicans have kind of written off, being that Klobuchar typically wins her races by very lopsided margins, and Republicans are thinking, well, we just kind of stick with Royce White since we largely don't have a chance in that race anyways. Any chance we could see a competitive Republican primary tonight, at least on the Senate side?
I expect it'll be relatively close because he did win the endorsement. Republicans tend to back the endorsed candidate. On the other hand, there's been so much bad press for Royce White. He's got so much working against him, and so there might be Republicans might break away from him because he's such an obviously bad candidate for the fall. None of this really matters because Klobuchar is going to win by 10, 15, 20 points, depending on who the candidate is. Republicans just have to hope that whoever the nominee is, it's not somebody who's going to really drag down the rest of the ticket. And so I think Republicans with a brain are hoping that Frazier can overcome not winning the endorsement and win the primary.
Yeah, and you wonder if the state Republican Party would have made more of an effort to try to back someone else if they had other statewide elections, at least on the Republican side. as I was thinking, like if there was a governor race or maybe something for attorney general, they might put more resources or more pressure to get someone other than white. But as we kind of talked about, this is the only statewide race in Minnesota, well, outside of the presidency. So that could have possibly changed their thinking as well. But yeah, it will be interesting to see if this does get competitive coming up, at least since, as I mentioned, Fraser doesn't have a large financial backing, but Royce White certainly does have a very checkered history. Final question for you. Any other races we should be watching, at least in the Minnesota legislature? I know DFLers have a competitive race in South Minneapolis. There's also some races in the Winona area to watch. So what are you keeping an eye on in terms of the Minnesota legislature?
Yeah, there's those two that you mentioned, three really strong candidates in, I think it's 61A, that's South Minneapolis. And I think whoever wins that race is going to become a kind of rising star in that caucus. And then you mentioned Winona. That seat has been held by the Democrats since the 80s. And so it's going to be important that for them to hold the majority, that they hold that seat. And so two pretty good candidates down there. Republicans have a number of kind of far-right versus conventional conservative races, a handful at least. And so that will be interesting, too. There's Brian Johnson up in Isanti. I think he faces a primary challenger. He's the incumbent. The mayor of Isanti, who's got a long history of tax liens, he won the endorsement there. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, we'll have. It should be an interesting night overall, and polls close at 8:00. So get out there and vote.
Absolutely. And one final topic to talk about with you before we end up wrapping things for today, and that's your column you wrote titled, "Here's What Tim Walz Has Done as Governor of Minnesota," as you were able to break down pretty extensively all of the accomplishments and policy ideas that Walz was able to get through the legislature during his second term as governor of Minnesota. And at least for me, the main ones that jump out that at least kind of fit on, bumper stickers or maybe are most marketable for him at the national level as he continues running for vice president are at least education, legalizing marijuana, and, of course, adding abortion protections for Minnesota. Those are at least the major policy accomplishments, among others, that jumped out at me. I'm curious, at least from your perspective, kind of as an overarching view, what do you think his most significant accomplishments were that could at least help him on the VP level as he continues to run along with Kamala Harris?
Yeah, well, first I want to thank Max Nestorak and Dina Winter helped me with put that story together. And I think that the codifying abortion rights abortion is going to be on the ballot, and in a number of states on ballot initiatives. It continues to be a major concern and issue, especially in states where they don't have reproductive health options like we do here, and so I think that's going to resonate. You mentioned the free school lunch. I think could be very attractive to voters, as well as you mentioned legalizing marijuana. Almost half of states have done so now. The child tax credit and the working family credit. I think just the general tenor of that 2023 session that was really pro-worker, a number of bills working out for worker rights and worker safety. I think those are what's going to be helpful to the Harris-Walz ticket, especially in the crucial blue wall states of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan.
Well, I encourage you to go check out that story that Patrick and others at the Minnesota Reformer wrote titled, "Here's What Tim Walz Has Done as Governor of Minnesota," because it's an extensive list of things he was able to do during this second term. A lot of them you may have forgotten about, so make sure you go check that out over at minnesotareformer.com. Well, we are just about out of time as we've been chatting with Patrick Coolican, who is the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer, talking about primary day, among other things. Always enjoyed chatting with Patrick every Tuesday. So, Patrick, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we'll chat again with you next week.
Always a pleasure.
All right, let's take a break and send things back over to Matt McNeil on AM 950.
I am a man of constant sorrow. Hey, Mr. DJ, put a record on. I want to dance with my baby.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Hey, reminder, Matt Matthews tickets, we got those given away coming up here before the end of the show today. You know, it's the political season, primary day here, Patrick. Let's take a look at a candidate that's running on the Republican side, see if we can find out a little bit about Bernie Perryman. She's a Republican up in Senate District 14A.
And last but not least, someone else touched about supporting life. I am a pro-lifer, and I do support life from to the unborn. They have a respect. We should respect every unborn and through every stage of life. There should be no cause to have abortion, and I'm very supportive that we don't, with Roe and Wade and all this stuff going on.
We might play that again here in a second, because it sounded to me like what she said was that she didn't believe in any exceptions in abortion at all. You know, like life of the mother, a child's been raped, the kind of one of those things. There shouldn't be any exceptions at all, to abortion. Because I'll tell you what, that can't be right. This modern Republicans, they don't want to. Let me go to our webpage here. Let me check on the old about issues here. Blah, blah, blah. Ooh, she owns 2 Battery Plus stores. Perfect for all my sex toys. In St. Cloud and Sauk Rapids, you know a lot of those batteries are going into sex toys. Batteries Plus, sex toys. I am not being, and I apologize to Battery Plus. It's just sometimes the jokes just come. So, but I mean, if you do need them, there you are. Sorry. Let me scroll down some of the issues here. Ooh, issue number 1, supporting businesses, because no one does that. Public safety. Oh, okay. All right. Crimes everywhere. Bah! Tax relief. Okay. I don't know if you know this, but Governor Walz signed the biggest tax cut in the history of the state of Minnesota. He did. Amazing. Education. Oh, it's the same thing. It's like, you teachers need to be reined in. Parents get to decide what you teach them. That sort of thing. All right. But funny, I'm looking here. Bernie Perryman, and Bernie, of course, even though it sounds like Bernie Sanders, Bernie is a woman. Nothing here about abortion. I wonder why. Patrick, could you once again play? This is from Heartland Signal. This is her in 2022 talking about her stances on abortion.
And last but not least, someone else touched about supporting life. I am a pro-lifer, and I do support life from to the unborn. They have a respect. We should respect every unborn and through every stage of life. There should be no cause to have abortion, and I'm very supportive that we don't, with Roe and Wade and all this stuff going on.
So she basically says no exceptions for life of the mother, rape, anything like that. Nope, no exceptions at all. Because it's funny. I keep telling you guys, these Republicans are trying to make it seem like we're not really these far-right guys that those Democrats make us out to be. We're not really that bad. We're there's a lot of things I agree with. I'm very happy Governor Walz is on the presidential ticket. You can't trust me. And then they get into rooms where they think they're alone and they're not being filmed and they think it's all safe Republicans. And they talk about, how I'm going to make sure an 8-year-old who's been raped carries that baby to term. 'Cause Jesus! And, yeah. So it's interesting. Now, I'm not saying she said that, but she did say she wanted no exceptions for abortion at all. rape, incest, life of the mother sort of thing, So, I mean, the impression I get from Bernie Perryman for, 14A, batteries plus. The impression I get is that rape, incest, life of the mother, they don't matter. Baby! And by the way, once again, standard Republican, cutting social safety net programs for that child that they have demanded to get born. 14A, that's a toss-up district, man. That is St. Cloud, St. Joseph, St. Augustine, and Waite Park. That is a toss-up district. You have an anti-abortion zealot. No exceptions. Her own words. She said, I don't believe that there should be rape for any instances, which would mean rape, incest, or life of the mother. So she thinks Jesus wants you to go tell a mother of 3 kids that the current baby she's going to carry is going to kill her, and that's what Jesus wants. Hey, kids, Jesus wants your mom dead. Jesus. That is Bernie Perryman, 14A, an anti-abortion absolutist. So, if you trust them, and once again, that was then. I've evolved on this issue. Don't talk about it. Ha! I guarantee you at this point it's one of two things. She's really going to pucker up on that one now and not want to say a thing about it, or else she's going to come on out and try to make it seem like it. But she's an extremist. And all of these Republicans, if you're in the metro area, you're in these suburban districts, and those Republicans are out there saying, I'm a middle-of-the-road Republican. No, they're not. They don't have individual choice within the Republican Party. Hey, trust me, it sometimes annoys the crap out of me. The way that, Democrats trying to come together on an issue is like herding cats. But at the same time, I'd rather have that than a political party who people are sitting in Las Vegas, or they're sitting in Florida, or they're sitting in Texas, and they're calling them up and saying, here's how you're going to vote on this issue, and here's the bill you're going to pass. I'd much rather have individualism than absolutism. And these guys, once again, when they let you see behind the curtain, they show you exactly who they are. Should mention as well, it is primary day. First of all, I really hope it's Royce White. I can only imagine the headaches that guy is going to create for the Republican Party if he is the Senate nominee. I can only imagine I can only imagine. Seriously, I can only imagine. 2 is interesting because, once again, there seems to be a non-fight between Joe Tirab and Taylor Rahm, and no one seems to know who's voting for who. And Minnesota 7, you've got that extremist far-right loon ball there. Steve Boyd, who's trying to knock off Michelle Fischbach. That would be interesting. If Boyd does pull it off, and he might. I mean, Minnesota 7's got enough crazed loons. And reminder, this is a primary. So it's the extremists generally pick on this sort of thing. So, Boyd could win that. My guess would be is Fischbach would run as a moderate or as an independent and still have a decent chance at winning. It'll be interesting to see how she messages to moderate Democrats, moderate Republicans, like I'm not the far right guy. So it'll be interesting. And then, of course, a few House, Senate races around that are going to be kind of interesting. Overall, it should be a standard night. I'm pretty sure a little after 8 o'clock we'll have an idea of if the Republican Party of Minnesota has absolutely tormented themselves, and lassoed their ship to the sinking larger ship that is Royce White. I will. That will. Wow. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. Matt Matthews is coming to the State Theater in January. Tickets go on sale this weekend. It's Bougie on a Budget tour. He is going to be, once again, at the State Theater. I've got a pair of tickets before you can buy them. All right. Right. They don't go on sale till Friday. So you can win your tickets right now. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Caller number 5. You're going to win yourself tickets to go see Matt Matthews in January over at the State Theater. Good luck. Let's take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Tuesday. AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Patrick, you got a winner over there, correct?
Yes, Ken from Crystal. You're seeing Matt Matthews. Congratulations.
Ken and Crystal, congratulations. I got tickets tomorrow. I got tickets on Thursday. I got tickets on Friday. Make sure you're listening all week long for those tickets right here on AM 950. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. I want to talk about, and I've been meaning to bring this story up because of, I talk a lot about the charter schools, and that I'm not a big fan. Charter schools with campuses in Minneapolis and St. Paul has lost in Minneapolis, St. Paul has lost $1.3 million in state funds after allegedly falsifying attendance records, which follows an investigation by the Minnesota Department of Education. The information was revealed in a recent filing after the Minnesota Internship Center attempted to appeal the Department of Education's decision to decrease the aid by $1.3 million. However, the Court of Appeals upheld the decision. This is the school's second attempt to appeal the decrease in funding. According to the filing, the school has allegedly manipulated attendance records, reporting an average daily membership of 520.98 in the fiscal year of 2018. It is also claimed to be based on the 2018 enrollment number. 485 students would need free or reduced lunch in 2019. However, the complaint filed said that the employers were directed not to withdraw inactive students despite being required after 15 consecutive days of absence. This was allegedly done solely for financial benefit, the filing reads. So basically, that if a kid doesn't show up for school and it's been 15 days, they got to come off the books. They didn't take the kids off the books and kept the money. An audit was conducted in 2019 and completed October 2021. The results show 9 types of reporting inaccuracies related to general education revenue, resulting in a net decrease of average daily membership of 137.28. So basically, yeah, they dropped significantly. Let's just put it that way. The audit also found 6 types of reporting inaccuracies that decreased the number of enrolled students eligible for free lunch down to 100. They decreased it 131. So basically, they had 350 kids who needed reduced lunch, not the 480 they were saying. And if I understand this correctly, they didn't have 520 kids. They had 300 and somewhere around 90-some kids. But they were taking the money for the 500. Tracy Elberlin, school principal and board chair, said none of the employees involved in falsifying records work at the school anymore. We had a big staff turnover. The people who weren't doing their jobs were let go or quit on their own. The school's executive director is one of the few remaining employees from the time that but was working as an assistant director at the time. All right. It is clear that no matter who is in charge of the House, the Senate, and the governor's office next year, that one of the things that has to be done is an immediate audit of these programs, because there are just way too many people that are saying, hey, this is free money. And once again, I get it, especially in a state where it leans Democrat. You hear someone saying, I'm going to do good. And you say, well, they're going to go do good. All right. Well, we probably don't need to do that, watch over them. What you don't understand is there's a lot of people out there going, we're going to do good. And their goal is not to educate kids. It is to basically take taxpayer dollars. And there are a lot of things, and I'm probably going to at some point write a longer article about this, about my disdain for how the school system has gone. I mean, you want to understand why your community is not as cohesive as it used to be. Well, I think a large part of it is the education system, is that you used to go to school with everyone in your neighborhood. Maybe 1 or 2 kids had private schools or went to a religious school or were homeschooled, but 90+% of the neighborhood all went to the same school district. Today, I think one of the reasons why people don't know their neighbors anymore, people don't know who lives down the street anymore, is that most of the kids go to completely different schools. And there's 12, 13 different schools represented in any given neighborhood anymore. Plus the fact that so you're losing on a societal level because you just don't know your neighbors. The world is people know people online, but they have no idea who lives next door to them on either side. I also will say this: charter schools are notoriously horrible. From earlier this year in the Minnesota Reformer story on this, Minnesota charter schools perform worse than traditional public schools on average. In 2023. The reading proficiency was 11 points less than the public school system at charter schools. 11 points. That's not a little bit. The math proficiency was 20 points less. And once again, I don't think the public schools are necessarily getting sky-high numbers, but they're doing a heck of a lot better than charter schools. And there comes the question that you have to ask. And sure, I know there's one or two charter schools that they're all A students. They all do a great job. Fine. But the vast majority of them suck at educating kids. They're horrible at it. And yet this seems to be the continuing, well, it's more charter schools. Really? You're not going to increase the quality of education with charter schools. It's clear that this is a problem. And now we have to wonder how many of these charter schools are stealing us blind by taking taxpayer dollars for kids that are not even in the classroom anymore. The education system, it really has gotten screwed up. That is for sure. Sure. Native Roots Radio, that is coming up next. Have a good one. We are back with Jeff Stein on a Wednesday. Till then, see ya.